Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 9 a.m. Say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Delegate Otto, would you be willing to offer prayer to the group this morning?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for the opportunity. Let us seek a posture of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for making it through this week, giving us the strength and courage to represent our constituents and do the best we can for the state of Maryland. May you guide us and direct us as we go into this Easter season and remember the great gift that you've given us. And we ask for your strength and support and send the Holy Spirit to give us the wisdom and courage to do the things that you would have us to do. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Members, could I get a motion to approve the meetings from February 24th?
Motion to approve.
Second. All right. All those in favor, aye. All those opposed.
Aye.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Eastern Shore delegation. Today is Friday, March 3rd, 2023. Today we have the Maryland Department of Natural Resources Secretary Josh Kurtz, Maryland Port Administration, Maryland Transportation Authority, and then a special presentation by our DMO representatives from the Eastern Shore, and looking forward to get started. Secretary Josh Kurtz, are you with us this morning?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Chairman Adams, for inviting me.
Okay, and you're very welcome. Thanks for being here. As I've said earlier, we've had a terrific support from the Moore administration on the presentations as we learn and hear from the secretaries and their departments, and we look forward to your presentation today, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. And again, thank you all very much for having me today. Wanted to focus in on a few things as we've been getting up and running and starting to engage with constituents, especially on the Eastern Shore. And I think I want to start focusing there. Nice to see Beth on the line as well. So when we first kind of kicked off, really the focus has been kind of twofold in the first month. It's been engaging with stakeholders. Obviously, we're in the legislative session, so we want to get feedback from as many people as possible. And really, when you look at the Department of Natural Resources, our work covers so many groups across many areas. Some of our key natural resource economies are really focused on the Eastern Shore. When I think about, fisheries, our forestry industry, outdoor recreation. And so we've been working really diligently to meet with as many of those stakeholders as possible to try to get perspectives, learn about key concerns, key issues, and also start to figure out how we can work together moving forward and kind of building those lines of communication. So that's been a major focus. Another piece has also been, obviously looking internally, getting to know the team here at DNR, where we work, and figuring out how we can better connect all of our teams with the constituencies and on the Eastern Shore and across the state. One of the things that kind of has jumped out, and one of the things that we were really focused on when talking to the governor when he brought me in, was really looking at some of the concerns around invasive species. And we see that as potentially really large impacts, thinking about blue catfish, things like that, as they work their way up the bay and into the ecosystem. So there's some of the, I'd say a larger focus on some of these bigger kind of scale concerns that we're seeing. And what we've seen obviously is with blue catfish, the impacts in the oyster space, the crab space, the striped bass space, continuing to grow until we can get more of a handle on that situation. Another piece too, when we look at some of the opportunities, obviously the Great Maryland Outdoors Act passed last year. This brings a lot more resources and funding for us to be able to work on parks and be able to work on some of the properties that we have to make improvements. So they're more accessible, they're easier to find and understand, and we can drive more of that natural resource economy and provide greater opportunities across all of our parks. So we've been looking at the Great Maryland Outdoors Act and really starting to put that plan in place. And that I think pertains really heavily to several of the parks on the shore as well. So that's been kind of a big focus as we've moved in. Moving forward, we're going to really continue to orient around large scale solutions. We know we have resilience issues with flooding, with saltwater intrusion, things like those kind of larger scale issues as well. So we're working with kind of our sister agencies at MDA and MDE and MDEM to get a better handle on those and put together some plans. When I look at, how we build resilience, it's working with local governments, it's working with people on the ground and understanding the challenges that they face kind of at a day-to-day, week-to-week, and then kind of longer time horizons. So that's a place where we're really working to build out those plannings and be able to do that work as we move forward. I think also looking at how we continue to build our green economy, where are there opportunities to further support, whether it's through looking at challenges to specific industries. I had some conversations with some watermen recently about the issues and the challenges that arise from the oyster tags. So figuring out how we can make the business community, I think, or the business climate a little bit more friendly for those folks. So we're working on a few different places, I would say right now, to figure out how we move forward and boost our natural resource economy. And I think that also really kind of comes back to building abundance. The resource economies we have, the more that we have, the better off we're all going to be, also from an ecological perspective as well. So really taking that aim of finding balance and building abundance across our species, across our ecosystems, to ensure that we have these sustainable resources moving forward for the economic, the ecological, and the social benefit, right? That's what the Department of Natural Resource is tasked with. I do see a few hands here, Mr. Chair. Would you like me to move to questions?
Well, we can go ahead and have you give your full presentation. It's really up to you. If you'd like to just have more of a dialogue, that's certainly fine by me. It's your floor, and you have as much time as you wish. So you tell me how you like to proceed.
Well, I'll go to Delegate Jacobs and Delegate Ahrens, and then I'll jump in. I saw their hands pop up early, so I just want to make sure I'm covering the things they're interested in, and then I can continue on with the presentation if that works for you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So Delegate Ahrens was first. We'll start with Delegate Ahrens.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Good to see you again. I know you've been involved in this and it's been a short period of time, but it's really, if you could, any update on the Langenfelter project and what we're doing over there. I know the group has had some meetings. I haven't gotten any questions back. I don't know if you have anything at this point for us.
Yeah, so thank you for that question, Delegate. Yes, and after the public meeting, we've been collecting a whole bunch of questions from community members, and so we've been putting together a set of answers. We're meeting next week to discuss the project and to also make sure that we're getting clarity from all of the participants, not just the department, so that we can answer all these questions for constituents and make sure that it's a plan that as we move forward, we're taking those into consideration and frankly, building out a plan for how we're going to manage that property long term is really important. So it's not necessarily just for us thinking about this potential opportunity, but what could this property be long term? And I do know that there's many people that care deeply about it and want to make sure that we're protecting not only the property, but the resources that are around the property as well.
Okay, do you have any idea at the status of the contract? Is it a contract yet, or are you still in the middle of all that?
Yeah, that's with the Office of the AGs right now. We don't have a lease agreement yet, but that is in draft form right now, is my understanding.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Delegate Jacobs.
Delegate Jacobs. Delegate Jacobs.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary. I didn't want to miss my daily conversation with you. And I want to thank you for your accessibility, because I'm, kind of laughing about it, but I pretty much have a conversation every day with you, and you've been very accommodating, you and your staff, and I do appreciate that because it's a lot of issues, and it's a lot to talk about. I was glad to hear you mention the blue cat invasive species issue. I think it's one of the biggest issues facing the Chesapeake Bay right now is this proliferation, and I look forward to working through some efforts to curb some of that as we move forward. But today we have a bill in my committee on Sunday waterfowl. The bill's got all kinds of moving parts, an increase in hunting license fees and stamps, et cetera. And one part of the bill, which is controversial on the shore, and that's why I'm bringing it up, is the Sunday migratory hunting. So I'm just wondering what what the department's position is on this, and because it is so controversial on the Eastern Shore. And what if you could briefly say what kind of stakeholder participation you had in that position also?
Yeah, thank you, Delegate. And I think when we look at that bill, there's a lot of really important pieces. I think to your point, right? There's a lot within that bill, and Sunday hunting has obviously come up as I think the piece that has the most concern from stakeholders. Right now, the position we're in is to now start to actually do more stakeholder engagement, seeing so much concern from different places, right? And so the goal for us is to make sure that this bill is moving forward, but that the Sunday hunting piece and those concerns are addressed. And I know that that's a tall order to ask, right? Because there's some very differing opinions across the state, frankly, on that piece. So right now, we've been going through the process of we've evaluated the bill, obviously, but testifying on that. And I think the next steps really are continuing to engage even further with the folks that have those deep concerns around Sunday hunting.
And I really appreciate that. I know that you've had plenty of time every day to take care of all your issues, but this is just another layer of legislation that really is any of these Sunday hunting bills is very controversial anyway, but this migratory issue is really a very divisive issue. And I just want to make sure you're aware of it, and that we can work together on this to do what's right for all that are involved rather than just a few. And so, I could go on for a lot longer, but I just want to sincerely thank you for your accessibility and how well your staff is working with us in Annapolis. And I look forward to continuing that arrangement. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, no more questions. Would you like to continue your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. And thank you both for the questions, delegates. And it is a priority for our administration and our department to make sure that we are accessible and that we are listening to constituents. And I'm looking forward to, frankly, the interim where we're not in session and we can go out and start addressing, I think, more problems proactively, and starting that with local level outreach and communication. The next piece I wanted to touch on quickly is the science behind the work that we do. We manage the water quality monitoring system across the state of Maryland for the entire state. That's a place where we're looking at increasing, looking at some federal fundings, but looking at our ability to better understand water quality at a finer scale. We know that water quality is really critical for the recreation on the bay, for our local waterways, for SAV beds. I mean, the laundry list, right? So we want to make sure that all of our decisions on either restoration or protection are based in the best science. Two things I want to highlight that we're excited about at the department is the deeper blue crab survey. We've heard from folks about the winter dredge survey and needing that much larger analysis of the blue crab population. So we have that in our fisheries budget this year. We're looking forward to working on developing that, giving us a better understanding of where we are. I know we've seen some of the numbers of decreases in the male crabs, and making sure that we're putting the science so we can find a really good answer. Again, I do think that's one that comes back to us tackling some of the invasive species issues as well. We also have the Bay Bottom survey that's going to be going on over the next several years. Again, expanding our ability to understand what's going on under the water on the bay bottom, so that we can do our work to protect and restore some of our critical species like oysters, like SAV beds, in a way that is guided by the best science, which will allow us to then most effectively spend state resources. So science is going to be another big piece as we move forward, and looking at opportunities to engage folks in citizen science. We've got watermen who are out on the water every day. We've got folks that spend their time out in the wetlands, out in the marshes, figuring out how other individuals can plug into this data collection process for the state, obviously working with our academic institutions across the state as well. So that's a big piece. The last thing I just want to mention briefly is partnership. And I think, both Delegate Jacobs and Delegate Aarons touched on this, but it's important for the department to make sure that we're building all of our work in partnership with local governments, in partnership with local nonprofits, with local community groups, because that's really how most of our work gets delivered, whether that be through some of our funding sources like the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Base Trust Fund, or the Resilience Through Restoration Program. These are very much our locally driven and locally delivered projects. So partnership is going to be a major focus for us as well. And I think those are the high points I wanted to cover today. I know I only had 15 minutes, but happy to come back and jump into details on anything else if that's helpful, Mr. Chair.
Sure. And Josh and Mr. Secretary, thanks for coming on. I just want to ask one question. I think many of the members and citizens on the shore would like to ask you. We were very fortunate for the past 4 years to have Jeannie Hadaway Riccio as our secretary. Daughter of the Eastern Shore is the easiest way to describe it. A wonderful advocate for our rural communities and the watermen. And when you spoke about engagement with the watermen through work groups and during interim, just would ask you, your thoughts early on with the relationship to the watermen and how best to engage with them in a holistic way. I think there are a lot of different organizations that surely have individual challenges and frankly opportunities to demonstrate our heritage of the shore, but also what is a strong economic driver, which is our seafood production. I don't mind sharing with you, I'm a 5th generation Eastern Shoreman, so my heritage is that of Somerset County and Deal Island Oriole and watermen. And while I'm not a waterman, I certainly represent them, and just thought I would get your thoughts about that, because I know that you're getting engaged by these groups as you would be. You're Secretary of DNR, and would appreciate your thoughts or comments in that regard.
Yeah, happy to. And I think you touched on something really important there, Mr. Chair. And I think that there's multiple groups, but that there's multiple sectors, right? And so we've got folks that are harvesting different species. We've got folks that are kind of sit in different kind of spaces within the industry, whether they're harvesters, processors, distributors. So what I've been trying to do is make sure that we're getting out and meeting with different association groups, but actually more importantly is meeting individuals. Was really happy to be able to be invited to the Maryland Watermen's Association meeting, where we were able to have a meet and greet, and I was able to talk to different watermen from across the state who have very specific and different challenges. And I think that's really important for us, is to make sure that we're trying to address as many of those in a way, back to that kind of local delivery kind of perspective, in a way that tackles the issues that people are seeing kind of in their respective waterways and watersheds, as well as, different regions across the Bay. That's the way we're going to continue to operate. I see that the same, whether that be working with folks that are interested in our parks. Western Maryland, Eastern Shore, Central Maryland, Southern Maryland, very different, right? So we need to make sure that we're building the spaces and the opportunities to engage with people that have, different perspectives and use the resource in different ways. That's going to continue to be a major focus, regardless of what unit in DNR we're talking about or what natural resource issue.
Yeah, and thank you for that answer. I know in my 8 years of service and now my 9th, the DNR has always been accessible, and I know it will be with you. The Eastern Shore representatives all are unified in working with your department, as Delegate Jacobs suggested. You and your department touch us and our citizens in a very important way as far as conservation and also advocacy. It is our heritage, and you in many ways are the defender of that heritage. Both for conservation and also management of the resource. And we appreciate exactly what you said and the tenor in which you bring it. It's much appreciated. Senator Mounts.
Thanks, Chairman. And Mr. Secretary, good to see you. And I don't want to overload your plate. I know you got a lot going on. Delegate Jacobs was talking about the Sunday waterfowl hunting, and there are a number of other issues right now before the legislature, which I know you're going to be focused on. And they're going to consume a lot of time. But I need to just put another thing on your plate that's it's a high importance, but has been very complicated. And that was the fishing pier in the old market, with the old bridge of the Chop Tank River. We had a temporary resolution with no, definite path forward. I know there are different options and things like that, but I'd encourage you to put that on your list of things to get an update. And so you'll have the latest and greatest on where to move forward, because, a lot of anglers and folks are getting ready for fishing season right now, and that will be a very hot topic for us, and you'll be hearing about it from the locals and from the elected. So I want to make sure that didn't miss the list. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for raising that, Senator. And yes, I've had actually 2 briefings so far on Bill Burton Pier and the planning and opportunities. We've been speaking with our engineering and construction team who've been looking at that and building out potential plans and also potential budgets for how we get there. So that is something that is already on the list, and I appreciate you raising it. I do recognize I've heard from a lot of folks who are just frankly have a lot less access to good fishing spaces because we don't have that pier open. So that is a high priority on our list right now.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, I see no further questions. Please do report back to the governor our sincere appreciation for having you and others attend these meetings as we close out. I think we have 2 more meetings after this, and this engagement is so important, and look forward to future opportunities to work with you and your department.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Okay, next on the agenda today is the Maryland Port Administration. I believe we have Bill Doyle and Holly Miller. Anxious to hear about what's happening in our port and perhaps some projects of interest here on the Eastern Shore. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chairman Adams and members of the delegation. For the record, my name is William Doyle. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Port Administration. The MPA is pleased to be here to represent the port's Poplar Island Ecosystem Restoration Project and Mid-Chesapeake Bay Island Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Project. We continue to build for the success of our waterways and infrastructure together, while ensuring the port remains a steadfast steward of the environment and a leader in innovative initiatives. Before we jump into our ecosystem restoration projects, I would like to begin by highlighting a few major accomplishments for the port this past year. Imported forest products at MPA terminals had the best year since 2014, and roll-on, roll-off cargo, its farm machinery, had the best year since 2012. Our cruise business is back and booming with 100 ship calls in 2022. Our competitive drive to market brought in over 349,000 passengers embarking and debarking at the Port of Baltimore. We're excited to bring a new home port call this year, Norwegian Cruise Lines, beginning later in the year. The port continues to be ranked first in the nation for automobiles, roll-on, roll-off equipment, and imported gypsum. After decades, the MPA broke ground on the long-awaited Howard Street Tunnel project, which will allow the Port of Baltimore to double stack trains all the way into the Midwest, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Chicago. The project consists of vertical clearance improvements in the tunnel and 21 other locations between Baltimore and Philadelphia. Most of the construction is happening in Pennsylvania right now. Construction is scheduled to be completed in 2025. Now, I would like to pass it off to my staff, the Director of Harbor Development, Holly Miller, and if you could allow a couple of seconds just to get a screen share ready, okay?
All right. Good morning. As Bill said, I'm Holly Miller. I'm the Director of the Office of Harbor Development at the Maryland Port Administration. So the MPA is responsible for stimulating the flow of waterborne commerce through the state of Maryland, and the overall success of the port in today's highly competitive trade environment is dependent on providing safe and reliable access for vessels via deep and well-maintained channels. There's a 50-foot channel system leading into the Port of Baltimore that we consider to be our marine highway. The Maryland Port Administration, partnered with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, performs maintenance of this marine highway through regular dredging of the channels. So the Poplar Island Ecosystem Restoration Project, located in Talbot County, is a highly successful example of the beneficial use of dredged material. This project is a collaborative effort between the Maryland Port Administration and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and this project has served as the main recipient of maintenance dredge material from the Maryland Bay channels since 2001, and it will continue to receive material through 2032. The project used dredge material to rebuild a heavily eroded island that was down to less than 7 acres and has now been restored to 1,715 acres of remote island habitat that is both diverse and thriving. It includes wetlands, uplands, and open water habitat features that are now home to hundreds of species of wildlife and waterfowl, including diamondback terrapins and state-listed endangered common terns. So in addition to the continued inflow of dredge material activities and upland cell dike raising activities, our project team is focusing efforts on the grading and planning of cell 5CD, which will be our next wetland cell that's developed. Additionally, we are focusing efforts on cell 2AX, which will be our first upland cell habitat development. And the project team is working on soil compaction and chemistry tests to help support upland vegetation, such as trees and shrubs and meadow habitat. And so each year, we partner with the town of Easton Public Works to collect used Christmas trees. About 150 trees are collected each year, and they're transported out to Poplar Island, where they're then placed in wetlands to provide habitat for wildlife and waterfowl. This program has been highly successful, and to date, we've transported more than 3,000 used Christmas trees out to Poplar Island through this program. So a few wildlife updates. In August of last year, we conducted an oyster larva study in partnership with NOAA. We placed oyster larvae on rock reefs in the open water embayment at Poplar, and our initial findings are showing that the oysters are attaching to the rock reefs and they're growing, which is very encouraging since this is a pilot project and we're hoping to expand it into other areas of the open water embayment. Additionally, a barn owl, which is a state rare breeding species, was found on Poplar Island nesting in one of our pieces of construction equipment last year. This year, we installed nesting boxes, and the owls have returned and successfully nested in their new location. So the 2023 tour season is currently open for tours for the general public, school groups, birding groups, as well as elected officials and anyone that's generally interested in the project. You can sign up for tours now, and they run from March through October of this year. During the 2022 tour season, we welcomed more than 2,000 visitors to Poplar Island, as well as the return of the Terrapin Education Research Partnership that had been paused due to COVID school restrictions. Additionally, our outreach staff has attended a variety of outreach events last year that included Bay Day, the Mayo Youth Summit, as well as Tillman Island Day. And we were able to connect with more than 3,500 individuals. Okay, so like Poplar Island, the Mid-Bay Island Ecosystem Restoration Project, located in Dorchester County, is restoring remote island habitat through the beneficial use of dredge material. This partner is also a partnership between the Maryland Port Administration and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And the project will provide between 90 and 95 million cubic yards of capacity for Maryland Bay channel material over the next 30 years. Without Mid-Bay to accept the annual maintenance dredging, the Port of Baltimore's 50-foot marine highway would shoal into a controlling depth of about 45 feet within 2 to 3 years, which makes maintaining the deep and reliable access into the Port of Baltimore especially important so that we can maintain our competitive position for waterborne commerce. So the Mid-Bay project includes restoration activities at both Barren Island and James Island. The Barren Island portion of the project includes the installation of breakwaters and sills that will help protect the existing island remnants, seagrass beds, as well as restoring wetland habitat. The James Island portion will include 2,072 acres of remote island habitat restoration, which will include both wetlands and upland habitats. So the Mid-Bay project has officially kicked off with the signing of a project partnership agreement between the Maryland Port Administration and the Army Corps of Engineers. And we held a kickoff event in October of last year, where the Army Corps of Engineers awarded their first construction contract of $43.1 million to Coastal Design and Construction, which is a small Commonwealth of Virginia-based company. The event was attended by White House Senior Advisor Mitch Landrieu, and he was joined by Senator Ben Cardin, Senator Chris Van Hollen, Congressman John Sarbanes, and the U.S. Assistant Secretary of the Army, Michael Connors, to help celebrate the momentous occasion. So the Barren Island restoration is the first part of the Mid-Bay Island project, and the field construction work is expected to begin early next week. It will include the installation of sills and breakwaters to protect the existing island. The future phases of Barren Island are anticipated to start in 2025, and that will include completion of the sills, creating bird islands, and placement of dredge material and wetland development. So the Maryland Port Administration continues to implement a variety of engagement tools to help inform our stakeholders about this project. The MPA has developed a Mid-Bay webinar and video that can be found on our maryland-dmmp.com website. And we also send out regular project newsletters to interested stakeholders. We hold open house and community events with citizens and stakeholders to help keep them updated on the project. And our last open house event was held in November of last year at the Hoopers Island Volunteer Firehouse. We're also working to schedule a follow-up meeting with the local watermen in April to help get them updated on the project. And then lastly, we've established several Mid-Bay environmental working groups that kicked off at the end of last year. And they are meeting at regular quarterly frequencies with the next meeting scheduled to occur March 28th. So that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for your time, and we really look forward to the Eastern Shore delegation's continued support, and we will continue to keep you updated on project milestones at each step of the way. And if there are any questions, we're happy to take them.
Okay, before we go to Delegate Hutchinson, kind of a smile and a question. I wonder if we could get a tour of the Eastern Shore delegation out to Poplar Island at some point. Does that seem like an appropriate?
Yep, we absolutely would love to have you and host you out there.
Okay, I think we would have a number of members interested. I've not been on that tour, although I think a number of ours have. Delegate
Second that
Hutchinson.
motion, Chris.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Adams. Holly, thank you so much for that update. I was very curious on all those projects that you just mentioned. I've been to Poplar Island a couple of times, and I look forward to going back again. I actually remember many days of having a great day on James Island in the 20 years that I've been on the Eastern Shore. So it's always sad to see the islands disappear. And I'm happy to see that Barren Island will be rebuilt, which should give some protection to Hoopers Island, Hoopersville. So my question is, though, we always seem to go back and rebuild islands that disappear. Why can't we actually do that on islands such as Hoopers Island or Hoopersville now before they actually do disappear?
I mean, I think, I'm sorry. Oh, so this project was approved by the congressional authorization. So there's a long and lengthy approval process and screening process for how we select these projects. But, you know, in theory, it could be restored, but there's a lot of authorizations that have to occur for that to happen.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Mounts.
Just a quick follow-up to the Mid-Bay project. We wanted to check in and find out the status of the dredging of Fishing Creek along with that project. You may be able to answer that right now, but if you wanted to, we could follow up after this meeting. But That's been an interest for our delegation in the work that's being done there. There are a number of benefits of dredging Fishing Creek to use that as for a number of different purposes. But I don't know if you want to talk about it right now, or if you just would like to send an email later, just clarifying kind of where that is, because I know there were a number of meetings and discussions about when, how, and if that was going to be done.
Yeah, I think we can follow up with you after this meeting. I would need to check in with the Army Corps of Engineers. They're the ones who are responsible for that dredging, so I would need to kind of get a status check from them.
Absolutely. Thank you. And they love it when you all are in Hooper's Island. It's always a good visit. Thank you.
It is. I mean, we definitely enjoy going down there and engaging with everyone. So the last event, like I said, in November was really well attended. We had over 35 people there, and I was there personally, and I really enjoyed talking to everyone and about the project and just what they're interested in. So it was a really great event. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, Holly, I do have a sort of a follow-up question. It just kind of goes to the work groups. Could you tell me a little bit more about the work groups and how you post notice for that? And as with Senator Mounts, I attended a meeting at Hooper's Island. I remember that being a presentation, I think, by your group and maybe DNR. But Taylor's Island, there was also sort of a meeting where a number of different agencies and interests were there, and it almost presented itself like a mini convention, so to speak, as citizens from the area could kind of walk around and look at charts and graphs and other posters that talk about what's going on and talk to decision makers. And I thought I would just ask you through the lens of future engagement, where if I'd like to attend or citizens attend, how do we find out about it, and then what is an appropriate way for citizens to engage with the working group?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have all of our quarterly meetings scheduled for this upcoming year, and for people who are on our interested stakeholders list, they get notices, emails, and newsletters that would include that information. But if anybody is interested that maybe isn't currently on the interested stakeholder list, they can reach out to me or any of my staff directly. We will get you set up for that and make sure that you have the information to attend. Those work groups are made up of a variety of stakeholders, including state and federal resource and regulatory agencies, watermen, citizens, anyone who's pretty much interested in the project. And they can attend that meeting, and the project team between the Maryland Port Administration and the Army Corps of Engineers present details about like how we're progressing with the design, what we're thinking about for habitat development. And so it's a really good opportunity to hear in-depth information about the project.
Okay, that's great. And we have the federal delegation on as well. So we'll get your contact information and share that with the representatives. I think they just put that in chat a minute ago. Yeah. So in closing, because I see no other questions, we'll take you up on my request and your offer to have the delegation come through and visit Poplar Island. I'll make it so.
That's great. We'd love to have you out.
All right, very good. Thank you very
much. Thank you.
Members, we're going to depart from our calendar just briefly. Delegate Grice has been working hard. He's on the Appropriations Committee, and as you know, we have the season for budget coming up, and Delegate Grice, instead of me kind of walking through what this is going to be, how about if I turn the floor over to you? I think you've got a very important subject that we should be able to handle briefly, but super important for the Eastern Shore.
Sure, and I'll be as brief as I possibly can. As many of you all know, there's quite a bit less money, and especially the capital budget than we had last year. It's actually over $1 billion less that we have to spend this year compared to last year, and we thought we were going to have more, mainly because of the infrastructure bill that passed out of Congress last year. Unfortunately, that money isn't coming to the state as quickly as we thought it was. So now, as we move through session, it looks like we're going to move the operating budget out of appropriations next week, and the capital budget, that's usually a week or two after that. But decisions are being made now, especially in the capital project. And as many of you guys know, the budget process had changed a little bit this year, mainly because we have a different governor. Typically in the past, we would make our requests to Department of Budget Management late summer, early fall. And we would hope at that point, that's usually our first try, our first stab at getting money back home. And so we did that this year, but unfortunately, it was the last year for Governor Hogan and the first year for Governor Moore. And so Governor Moore really he had about 2 months to formulate both his operating and his capital budget. And he didn't really have a whole lot of time to go throughout the state and listen to the importance of all these projects. The way that Department of Budget Management did prior to him. So what he did, instead of putting a lot of projects in the miscellaneous section of the capital budget, he basically put his priorities in there. And again, this isn't a slight on him. He only had 2 months. So what he did instead is he left, instead of leaving about $15 million for legislative priorities, he left about $150 million. So that gave the legislators a lot more flexibility than we normally have. Unfortunately, $150 million doesn't go, or $100 million for capital, $50 million for operating, but we can use it all for capital if we wanted. Unfortunately, $100 million or $150 million just doesn't go very far. So I think as a matter of strategy for the Eastern Shore, because we didn't have any projects at all in Governor Moore's miscellaneous section of the capital budget. So we were sort of behind the 8 ball to begin with. So we're doing as hard a job as we can in both of the budget committees to have our projects funded. But I think our first stab, at least this point in the process, is to ask the governor for some money in the supplemental budgets. I know there's going to be at least one. Hopefully there'll be more than one. And so rather than each one of us individually or each of our districts requesting a letter, I think it would go a lot farther. It'll be a lot more powerful if our entire Eastern Shore delegation can prioritize. And that's really the key word right now, whether it's in our budget committee or even for the governor. They want us to know what our priorities are. We can't fund everything, but they're going to do their very best to fund, our top few projects. And I was talking to each one of you individually throughout the week, and it looks like at least for the mid and upper shore, the Benedictine School, they have this big project now. They serve the entire state. Our kids with developmental disabilities, it's a huge resource and it's a placement for a lot of our public schools, and they're building housing there. And so they need as much help as they can get. So that would be our suggestion for the upper shore. The mid shore, we have Easton Hospital. And as you all recall, we were slow to get started on this, mainly because there was some opposition, particularly from Caroline County in the beginning, mainly because we needed more of a presence, both for urgent care and primary care, and also some specialty care. And Shore Regional did a heck of a job. I mean, they've done everything we asked them to do and more. And we also and down in Dorchester, we had an aging hospital down there. And that's been dealt with as well. So here we are with the final piece, and that's to build this regional hospital. And it's a $400 million project. And we have Ken Guzell on the call as well. Certainly, you can answer any questions that anybody has. But the project's a $400 million project. They're going to need about $100 million from the state. I talked to leadership in the appropriations committee. We can cobble together a couple $1 million, but we're going to need a heck of a lot more than that to get started on that. So I would suggest for the midshore, that would be our priority. And I don't know a lot about the trauma center down at Peninsula. Mr. Chairman, you might be able to expand on that. But I know that's an urgent funding request as well in their operating budget. So I believe that's the priority for our delegation members on the lower shore. So my suggestion would be to do a delegation letter with these 3 projects. to the governor. And then I don't know what the amount is with the ask, but we should start, we'll include that in the letter, after we consult with these stakeholders.
Well, the reason why I broke the meeting the way we did is because you told me if Ken's on, we were trying to respect his calendar or else, and we can finish the rest of this in our course of business at the end of the meeting. So Ken, are you on? I'm not seeing him right now, Jeff.
Okay. Yeah, he might come back on. Maybe he can, if anybody has any questions, just let us know and we'll get him back on the call.
Okay.
But,
Last call for Ken Kozel. We kind of held the line for that, but all right. Well, we'll come back to that in a little bit.
Thank you.
Hopefully. All right. Maryland Transportation Authority, Will Pines. Will, you there?
I am. Good morning, Chair Adams and members of the
Good morning.
Eastern Shore delegation. Can you hear me?
Thank you for that. We had a short departure and we appreciate your patience. Go right ahead.
No problem. I was interested listening there. So as you mentioned, I'm Will Pines, Executive Director for the Maryland Transportation Authority, or MDTA, not to be confused with MTA. I am proud of my upbringing on the Eastern Shore, having grown up in Somerset County. And so glad to be able to join you today. And as I'm sure many of you know, the MDTA is responsible for running the state's 8 toll facilities. Despite the continued challenges associated with the pandemic, the MDTA maintained its financial standards while funding multiple system preservation and improvement projects, such as the eastbound Bay Bridge rehabilitation, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, the I-95 Belvedere Road interchange project, and the Bay Bridge automated lane closure system. Additionally, the MDTA is making important strides in other parts of the state, such as opening the new Nice Middleton Bridge in Charles County ahead of schedule and on budget, and the ongoing work on the extension of the I-95 express toll lanes in Baltimore and Harford counties. While the last few years have been challenging for the transportation sector, I'm pleased to report that the MDTA weathered through those financial challenges that stem from the pandemic. Transportation issues touch each of us, and I'm proud to be a part of an agency that seeks to provide the best facilities and customer experience for the traveling public now and into the future. Now, I'd like to focus on a few projects that may be of interest to you. And I'm going to start with the Bay Crossing Study Tier 2 NEPA. This follows on the Bay Crossing Study Tier 1 NEPA was completed in April of 2022, when the record of decision was approved and it formally identified Corridor 7, or the corridor containing the existing Bay Bridge, as the selected corridor alternative. The Bay Crossing Study Tier 2 NEPA was initiated in June of 2022. The MDTA is now conducting that Tier 2 study, which will take 4 to 5 years to complete. The federally required Tier 2 study will build upon those Tier 1 findings and evaluate alternatives within the 2-mile wide Corridor 7 corridor, which also extends for 22 miles from the Severn River Bridge in Anne Arundel County to the US 5301 split in Queen Anne's County. The Tier 2 NEPA study aligns with the resolutions and letters of support prepared by 12 counties and 1 municipality, being Ocean City, Maryland, that called for a new replacement bridge at its existing location. We have been busy on the study. MDTA conducted an extensive traffic count program in summer and fall of 2022, with counts performed at 141 separate locations and 48 separate intersections. We're analyzing that data now to best understand the current traffic conditions. In September, we held open houses to perform and inform the public of the study's initiation. Over 700 comments were received during that public comment period from August 11th of 2022 through October 14th. All public comments have now been posted to the study website. And if any of you didn't have the opportunity to attend the open houses, a recorded copy of the virtual meeting is posted on the website as well. So some things that we're working on now. We're currently developing an equity and environment justice plan for fostering meaningful, equitable engagement with underserved populations in the study area. We've also begun a robust coordination process with MDOT SHA and MTA and the Tier 2 interagency group comprised of NEPA cooperating and participating agencies. Looking ahead, we'll be even busier this spring. We'll be reaching out to local transit providers for the projected transit needs in the corridor. And then following this coordination, we will host a virtual transit public listening meeting. These will be provided where we'll be able to get that transit information and generate discussion regarding potential transit opportunities. We are also beginning to engage with stakeholders such as emergency service providers, bicycle and pedestrian groups, and environmental organizations. Now, as promised, I want to talk a little bit about our eastbound Bay Bridge deck replacement, what we refer to as Phase 1A. The existing deck of the eastbound Bay Bridge was installed as part of a deck replacement project in the 1970s and 80s. That bridge deck now exhibits extensive deterioration and requires major rehabilitation to remain safe and extend the service life of the bridge. The current phase is a $140 million project that includes the replacement of the deck in what's referred to as the deck truss section of the bridge. And this is the portion of the bridge that's between the suspension span that has the cables and the through truss span, which is that secondary navigation channel that has the truss above the roadway on the eastbound bridge. The initial construction, including utility relocations on the bridge and the material procurement, is starting this month. Major construction of the deck replacement in the deck truss spans will start in late fall of 2023. The MDTA plans to minimize traffic disruptions and maintain all travel lanes on the bridge during daily peak hours. The new precast deck sections will be fabricated off-site and barged to the bridge. During overnight shifts, crews will remove portions of the existing bridge deck, install new precast panels, and reopen lanes in time for the morning commuters. We will require off-peak closures during the day to get that deck prepped each day to get ready for that next section. It's important to note that this project is not anticipated to result in the same kinds of traffic disruptions that were seen during our westbound Bay Bridge overlay project that we did in 2019. This will be more like the deck replacement project that we did on the westbound bridge and the suspension span that did that overnight. Although the project doesn't begin major construction until this fall, motorists will see the arrival of cranes this month to perform under-bridge utility work in preparation for the project's major work. We anticipate completing this phase of the project in winter of 25-26. Now moving to, we just had an announcement on our Bay Bridge automated lane closure system project. That what we refer to as the ALCS is a project constructed for opening and closing lanes, including two-way traffic operations on the bridge. Since two-way operations are implemented, lane closures have always historically been done manually, but the ALCS system will enhance the current manual system for motorists by allowing that to be done remotely and discontinue two-way traffic on the Bay Bridge eastern and western shores. The ALCS includes overhead lane use control signals, dynamic message signs, horizontal swing gates, and illuminated pavement markers. These enhancements are integrated into the existing Bay Bridge traffic control system, and many of you have probably already seen a lot of these features in place and active. In the fall of 2022, the MDTA began a phased implementation on the eastern shore side of the bridge to familiarize motorists with the system. This transitional period includes some manual support of the system with cones and barrels still being present. Starting the week of March 8th, motorists traveling eastbound during two-way on the westbound span will experience the Bay Bridge new automated lane closure system on the western shore. And we've concentrated our deployment on the primary two-way operation on that westbound bridge, but we expect full operation of the system before the summer travel period. Now, just for, all things Bay Bridge, to learn more about all things Bay Bridge, I encourage each of you to view the recordings of our Bay Bridge Reconstruction Advisory Group, or what's called the BRAG. We have quarterly meetings for that. And the BRAG is a group of local stakeholders from both sides of the Chesapeake Bay with experience on issues facing the Bay Bridge and its commuters. The BRAG meetings are open to the public, and we welcome all of you to attend and to invite your constituents to attend. Our team sends out meeting reminders to elected officials, which we hope that you will share. The MDTA maintains the BRAG website, where detailed agendas, materials, and all of the upcoming meetings are hosted in addition to the recordings for that previous meeting. Now, moving away from Bay Bridge for a second, but another important Eastern Shore project is I-95 at the Belvedere Road interchange. The MDTA is adding that interchange at Belvedere Road, and that will accommodate future economic growth of the nearby Principio Enterprise Zone in Cecil County. It'll provide more direct access to and from I-95 for trucks accessing that zone, thereby reducing truck volumes on local routes. It'll replace the existing Belvedere Road overpass with a new structure designed to convey traffic between I-95 and Belvedere Road, and it includes many other environmental mitigation and restoration measures. The interchange project will replace the existing two-lane overpass bridge on Belvedere Road with a wider structure featuring additional lanes and shoulders to accommodate the new interchange. Ramps in the cloverleaf pattern will provide access to and from Belvedere Road and northbound and southbound 95. Work includes improvements to Belvedere Road to accommodate the interchange and a larger bridge structure. Really kind of interesting for this project, the exit number for the new I-95 interchange will be exit 95. And this project is a partnership between the MDTA, Cecil County, Stewart Property Management Incorporated, and coordination with Federal Highway Administration. In 2018, a $20 million build grant was awarded by the US DOT to Cecil County to support the new interchange, and the project met the grant criteria for safety, economic competitiveness, quality of life, environmental protection, state of good repair, innovation, partnership, and additional non-federal highway revenue for infrastructure investments. In October 2022, a groundbreaking ceremony was held for the project. Construction is scheduled to begin this spring, and the new interchange is scheduled to open in 2025. Finally, in closing, please don't hesitate to contact our legislative assistant team, Brad Ryan or James Kittleman from our government relations team, if we can assist you or your constituents in any way. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to brief you on issues important to you and your constituents, and would be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, William. And before we go to Delegate Aaron's, Ken Kozal, when we get done with Q&A with MTA, we'll come to you and thank you for being on. Delegate Aaron's.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will, it's great to see you. And I just really, you covered everything, a lot of what I wanted to ask, but I just wanted to let everybody know you've been a great resource in trying to discuss what's going on at the Langenfelter property for the people in Queen Anne's County. And I appreciate your cooperation in getting the meeting public hearing set up. And I do know that my county commissioners are going to want to have a discussion with you all on that and DNR. And I want to thank again Secretary Kurtz. I think he's off the call now, but he's been a pretty big help in at least getting this out in front of, trying to get out in front of this after the way it started. So that's all I really wanted to say. It's a thank you and an attaboy. And again, thanks for all the work you did on Easy Pass too. That's all, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you.
Everybody likes an attaboy from Steve Aarons. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Delegate Hutchinson.
Attaboy, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pines, that was excellent briefing. I learned a lot in there. Well done. When we talk about the Bay Bridge or the new Bay Bridge, is that going to be a third bridge that you will be able to operate within the three, or is it going to be a replacement of the eastbound bridge?
So that's a great question because we get it a lot. And the short answer is that's not decided yet. That's what the study will conclude. Certainly the term third span started circulating a lot during the tier 1. And if the record of decision from that earlier phase of the study had decided to build a bridge elsewhere, then certainly it would have been a third span. But now that corridor 7 at the existing Bay Bridge has been identified as the corridor for further evaluation in the tier 2, part of that study will look at whether or not it makes sense from a life cycle cost perspective to replace one or both of the bridges, or to build a new, and there's a no build alternative there as an alternative as well. So all of those things have to be evaluated during the study, but we do recognize, I mentioned during some of the remarks that I made about the letters of support, we understand that many of the counties are asking for the bridge to be a replacement and not to keep the existing structures. So that will be taken into consideration as the study advances.
Thank you.
Okay, any other member questions? Okay, William, thank you very much. I don't have any questions for you. That was a thorough briefing, and as time goes on, we'll see that new bridge come forward, and interesting times for the Eastern Shore when that gets completed. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Okay. So members, Ken, thank you for being on. Jeff laid it out pretty succinctly. He's on Appropriations Committee, and we did want to hear from you. And it appears that Jeff's proposal that we'll have discussed today later amongst the members is how we approach making these requests. Historically, it's been by district, and that perhaps Jeff's thoughts are that we view some of these priorities as a delegation matter. And Ken, thanks for being on. I don't know if you wanted to just share some thoughts as to where you stand right now with the hospital, some headwinds, and how you view us as being helpful.
I do, Delegate Adams. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to spend a few minutes with the delegation this morning. I can't underscore the critical component that the Eastern Shore delegation plays in the success of getting a shovel in the ground for our Easton Regional Medical Center. We are working towards completing the application with the state for the certificate of need. My perspective is that application process is going very well, but in order to secure a shovel in the ground, we need state support for this project. And to make this among the highest priorities of the Eastern Shore delegation, I believe will speak highly to Governor Moore and his administration to show that the entire Eastern Shore is supportive of this new hospital. This is the largest project that the Eastern Shore will see for many decades to come, especially the Midshore region. It is critically important to our long-term success as a healthcare system, and all of the things that we've done over the last several years have culminated with this step in the process. And I feel like we are gaining momentum, and my concern is the longer we wait, as we all know, the more expensive this project gets and the more it prices itself out of realism. So I believe the time is now. We need to secure some funding through the governor's budget this cycle, with a path to getting to as close to that 100 million as possible over time. But it starts with a commitment this year. And if we can get a supplemental budget commitment from the governor for this project that would allow for ultimate commitments down the road, that will help. And I can't underscore how important that will be for the shovel in the ground concept to allow this project to proceed. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, so Ken, let me make a quick statement, which is that under the Hogan's budget, which is how this works, he had the $100 million in his budget. As is usual, when there's a change in administration, I think most of these budget items get removed, and then they want to review the projects on their own. And so we're sitting here now, as the public's listening to this, with no appropriation from the state for this hospital. And I guess the question that I have for you is, what would happen if by the time session's over, we have not appropriated any money for this project? What's going to happen in this process if that occurs?
that information would have to get conveyed back to the UMS board, who is ultimately going to approve putting a shovel in the ground in this project. And I can't speculate what the UMS board's reaction would be, but suffice to say, the $100 million contribution goes a long way to support the financial viability of this project. So without a commitment from the state, it compromises significantly the financial viability of this project, because if we don't have that commitment, then we would likely have to borrow that 100 million on top of the 350 million that we're already going to borrow. And that would likely make this project incredibly financially challenging. So the UMS board would need to know that, and they would make that ultimate determination. But from my perspective, it would be an incredibly challenging decision for them to make without some sense of the state's commitment moving forward.
Is it safe to say that the project would be at risk if we don't make the appropriation this session?
From Ken Kozel's perspective, sir, yes, sir.
Okay. Delegate Grice, you were leading this charge, and before we go back on the agenda, I'll leave it to you to ask further questions, or because obviously we're going to have to talk about this after our agenda and ongoing. But
sure, I don't have any questions for Ken. Just as a matter of where I suggest we move forward with this, one is our delegation sent a letter to the governor for some supplemental money this year, and then committee, I'll do as best I can to get as much money in the capital budget from the legislative side as I possibly can. And then also work as many pre-authorizations for future funding, because I think that's really what Ken wants. They don't need a lot of money right now, but they need that guarantee in the future that money is going to be available to them, because they have money set aside for this project, but they don't want to put a shovel in the ground if the state's not going to fulfill our end of any sort of commitment that right now we haven't really made. So I think he's just looking for that commitment. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right, Delegate Grice. Thank you for that. And you're right. It doesn't necessarily have to be all at once, but that commitment would, I think, provide the confidence to the UMS board that the state is at the table. And with the application approval by the end of this year, and with our commitment to raise an additional $50 million locally, which is my responsibility, which I believe we can achieve, that should give the UMS board confidence to proceed with the project and put a shovel in the ground.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ken.
All right, Ken, thank you very much for coming on briefly. And this project is nothing short of transformational for the shore. And the Secretary of Health, I think, is coming on next week, and there'll be many things that we'll talk about. But we would invite you to come back, or someone with the team to come back next week, and maybe we can just talk about what we've accomplished over the next 7 days. We want to make sure that the delegation is on top of this, and it surely through the lens of supporting you and your endeavor. So thank you.
I can't thank everyone enough for your support. You have been incredible, and this is our project, and I'm really looking forward to achieving our goals. So thank you so much for your support, and we'll be available as needed.
All right, thank you, Ken. Our friends with Eastern Shore DMO representatives, thank you for your patience, and I hope you appreciated our departure for a little bit, and I owe you one next time I see you. So if you would please, you have the floor, and thank you for your, again, patience.
Don't mention it. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Eastern Shore delegation. Thank you so much for allowing us time on your agenda this morning. And we'd also like to thank Betsy Hamilton from your office, Delegate Adams, for coordinating our participation here today. I'm Clint Sterling. I'm the Director of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism, and the Designated Marketing Organization, or DMO, for Somerset County, Maryland. Tourism is a sound investment for Maryland, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. I'm here with all 10 of our Eastern Shore DMOs to thank you for your continued support of the tourism industry. So just for some housekeeping, you may be asking what a DMO is. A DMO is traditionally known as the institution that promotes visitation or tourism to assist in developing local economies. So essentially our job as DMO is to bring overnight visitors into our designations so that they spend money and generate a positive impact. Each of Maryland's 23 counties has a designated DMO, as does Baltimore City and Ocean City. There's 25 of us throughout the state. So as many of you know, tourism is vital to Maryland's economy. as it delivers opportunity and quality of life for all Marylanders. Here's a very interesting statistic. Every dollar spent to market in Maryland as a tourism destination returns $31 to the state. Because of your support, we've been able to increase state and local tax revenue, jobs, and generate that positive economic impact. At the state level, Maryland saw 35.2 million visitors in 2021. They spent $16.5 billion. So how does that correlate? Well, that correlates to a reduction in each Maryland household's tax bill by $1,000. So when people hear tourism, typically they think of hotels, but in reality, the benefits of the tourism industry extend into many different sectors, including food and beverage, retail, recreation, air transportation, local transportation, as well as lodging. So how do these numbers translate for us here on the Eastern Shore? So we like to paint that picture. It translates to jobs, revenue, and quality of life for all of us here on the Eastern Shore. So I thought it would be helpful. We have a nice little presentation here I think you're going to enjoy to introduce you to your DMO partners here on the Eastern Shore. And we'd like to begin with Tara Hill Coursey, who's going to representing Caroline County. So take it away.
Thank you, Clint. Good morning. My name is Tara Hill Coursey, and I am with Caroline County Economic Development and Tourism, where I serve as the tourism manager. Caroline County is the perfect getaway for heritage experiences, outdoor excursions, farm adventures, and family fun. You can hike, pedal, paddle, or fish throughout our parks and nature preserves. As we are known for agriculture and farm tours, you can also spend the day exploring Caroline's charming small towns, shops, and galleries. The picture you see here depicts the historic steamboat wharf along the Choptank River, where the murals lend themselves to our bustling archway in downtown Denton. And to that, I'll pass it to Sandy Turner, Cecil County.
Thanks, Tara, and hello. I'm Sandy Turner with Cecil County Tourism. We're about to be the home of the country's largest Great Wolf Lodge property with 700 rooms. It's going to be located off I-95 in Perryville, and opening day has been moved up. It will be July 15th. We're, of course, very excited, and we can't wait for opening day, and we hope we'll see all of you there at some point in time. So next, you're going to hear from Holly Gilpin. Oops.
Good morning and greetings from Dorchester County. My name is Holly Gilpin and I am the Director of Tourism for our lovely county of Dorchester. Dorchester County is famous for being the home of Harriet Tubman. We welcome visitors from all over the world. Here is a picture of our famous Take My Hand mural where we are welcoming our visitors daily. Now we would like to welcome and introduce to you Shaylin Bolden from Kent County.
Good morning. I am Shaylin Bolden, the Tourism Manager for Kent County Economic and Tourism Development. Kent County is the home to wide open spaces, one of which is Eastern Neck National Wildlife Refuge. The refuge is an island of 2,285 acres. Established in 1962, Eastern Neck is a major feeding and resting place for migratory and wintering waterfowl on Maryland's famed Eastern Shore. The varied habitats, including brackish tidal marsh, forest, cropland, grassland, and open water impoundments, provide a home for a variety of wildlife species. The refuge also holds the designation of important bird areas by the Audubon Society. Thank you, and I would like to introduce April Plummer from Queen Anne's County.
Good morning, I'm April Plummer from Queen Anne's County. Our county is known for our trail system with over 14 miles of paved or boardwalk trails on Kent Island. This includes the popular Cross Island Trail that runs from the Chesapeake Heritage Visitor Center to Terrapin Nature Park, and the South Island Trail that runs from Mattapique State Park to Romacoke Pier. Next, you'll hear from Cassandra from Talbot. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Cassandra Van Hooser. I'm the Director of Economic Development and Tourism for Talbot County. Of course, we're the home of Frederick Douglass, the Oxford Bellevue Ferry, the historic Avalon Theater celebrating 100 years of entertainment, and of course, the beautiful Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum in St. Michael's that's undergoing a $31 million master plan. And I probably should have said Poplar Island as well. And you've heard a report about that this morning. And I will pass it now to my colleague, Krista Goller in Wycomico County.
Thank you, Cassandra. Thank you for allowing us this time this morning. My name is Kristen Galler. I'm the Tourism Manager and Designated DMO for Wycomico County. In Wycomico, we are known for our efforts in sports marketing. We support over 50 tournaments and events annually, most of them held at the Henry Parker Athletic Complex or the Wycomico Youth and Civic Center. And one of them includes the USSSA Eastern National Softball Tournament, which brings over 350 teams to the shore over the course of 3 weeks. Thank you all for your time, and I'll turn it over to Melanie from Worcester County.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Eastern Shore Delegation. It's great to be here. My name is Melanie Purcell. I'm the Director of Tourism and Economic Development for Worcester County on Maryland's coast. We are the only place in Maryland where the ocean meets the land, and we're home to Assateague Island State Park and National Seashore. As you would imagine, post-COVID, people are looking for outdoor recreation and adventure. We have that to offer not only in Worcester, but across the entire shore. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ocean City, Miss Erin Jones.
Good morning. My name is Erin Jones. I'm the advertising specialist for Ocean City Tourism, and I am speaking on behalf of Tom Perlazzo. And I'm presenting Ocean City, known for our 10 miles of family-friendly beaches and a newly renovated boardwalk. Ocean City is showcasing somewhere to smile about. We can't wait to hear all your memories of what makes Ocean City make you smile. And I'm going to pass it back to Clint Sterling. Thank you.
Well, hello, and here in Somerset County, we like to think ourselves as a hub for recreational tourism. But being that this year is the 15th year of Maryland State Dessert, we are the home of the Smith Island Cake. And if your participation in the Taste of Eastern Shore concerning that cake is any indicator, it's a very popular thing. So come down and see us and get a slice. So moving right along. And I think you can see from all of those things, just from the images that were put forth, is that, the Eastern Shore is a really big deal when it comes to visitation in the state of Maryland. And we're proud of it. And we're certainly a continued, just very appreciative of your support. So it is vital for all of us. And when we look at these numbers collectively for the Eastern Shore, though, combining all 9 counties in Ocean City, you can see that the tourism here is a powerhouse. And it's a powerhouse that's to be protected. The Eastern Shore's tourism industry draws $7.5 million visitors annually, roughly of which spend the night. And during their visit, they spent $3.6 billion supporting over 20,000 direct jobs and generating over $429 million in state and local taxes. So as we thank you for your support today, we thought it might be helpful to see a quick listing of the state's funding sources that we rely on to move our tourism efforts forward. In moving these efforts forward, outside dollars are brought into Maryland. They benefit local businesses and they generate revenue for the state. Simply put, the tourism industry can do more with more funding. So we respectfully ask you to consider supporting the following sources listed on the screen. I'd like to specifically mention the Maryland Office of Tourism Development, or OTD, and the Maryland Tourism Development Board. They fund an annual grant program that we rely on to advertise our local markets and attract visitors. So thank you again for your time this morning, and we are sincerely appreciative of the support that you've historically lent to the Eastern Shore's tourism industry and our DMOs. Again, tourism is a sound investment for Maryland. So at this time, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And again, thank you so much for all you've done for us.
Okay, thank you very much. While the members are considering whether they have questions, I want to thank you for the presentation, and again your patience when we think about the Eastern Shore and economic drivers. Surely agriculture, poultry rank high, but you define the enjoyment, the invitation of folks to come to the shore and spend time, but also for our own citizens, what we do with our time, and we thank you for making that just not just a business, but also an important way that we define our Eastern Shore heritage. And we talk about heritage so much here, whether it's art and entertainment and certainly tourism, jobs and everything that matters to us. We appreciated your presentation and how each county was able to highlight what would attract us and our visitors to come through. And I got to say the Wolf Lodge is pretty exciting. You have to let me know when that's ready to go up there in Cecil County. I'd like to check that out. Sounds like fun. So members, if you have any questions, I was just bloviating for a minute there, but it does not look like we have any questions for you, and we want to thank you for your time today.
And thank you very much.
Okay. All right, members, I think we have federal updates coming up. We have Congressman Harris's office on today.
Thank you, Chair Adams. Congressman Harris's fiscal 2024 appropriations request form is now live. I put the link in the chat box for anyone interested. Submissions must be made by March 10th. So feel free to use that link. Congressman Harris, Representatives Van Drew and Smith both from New Jersey, are continuing to call for a moratorium on offshore wind construction to investigate the whale deaths that have been occurring. And finally, H-2B visas and blue catfish language continue to be worked on for future legislation. And that is it for my report.
Okay, Mike, I think we have Senator Mouse. Do you have a question for Congressman Harris's office?
Yeah, thank you. Mike, were you on the call for the Shore Health presentation about funding? Have they been able to contact your office?
From the committee show when you talk.
Delegate Hartman, we hear you.
Senator Motz, no, I was not, but if you'll send me an email with what your concern is or request, I will investigate it for you.
Well, yeah, I've got a quicker. How about I text you Ken Kozel's phone number? If you could call him, they've been trying to reach the office to discuss potential federal funding options for the hospital. Would that be okay with you?
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, our good friend Kim Cradaville from Senator Cardin's office.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder that Senator Cardin's congressionally directed spending portal closes tonight at midnight. I know I've been in touch with many of you, local governments and municipalities, as well as nonprofits on the shore. So that closes tonight at midnight. Mike brought up the whale deaths. We have received Senator Carosa's and Delegate Hartman's letter and are working on a response for that. And as always, you know where to find me. Thank you. Great presentations. Appreciate it.
And you're all good friends, but our other good friend, Alyssa Hastings, Senator Van Hollen's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Similar to Kim's update, the CDS, the Congressionally Directed Spending portal for Senator Van Hollen, also closes tonight at midnight. We've been having lots of great meetings and conversations about projects all across the shore. I'm really excited to see how this process moves forward and trying to bring as many federal dollars to the shore as possible. And then as a quick personal update, I just wanted to thank everyone who reached out. My husband, Josh, has been in the hospital with a lung collapse and then a lung surgery. So just wanted to say thank you again for so much support that we've received from our Eastern Shore family. So thank you. And he's doing well. He's recovering very well.
Happy to hear that, and prayers to you and your family and your husband, for sure. Senator Moutz, you had a question?
Yeah, I raised my hand a little early. And for Kim and Alyssa, I'm really sorry to hear about Josh. I wasn't aware. But as far as Shore Health, has the Shore Health been in touch with your offices about their funding pursuits? Have they contacted you to try to get an earmark or whatever?
We had prior discussions with folks regarding that. To be honest, I'm not sure if they're in the portal at this point, but I can certainly double check that and I'll reach out to Ken.
Yeah, I just texted Ken's number to Mike, and the idea is to get the House and the Senate. As long as you guys are aware that that's an issue, that'd be fantastic if you could help. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. So members, this is any questions. Jeff, this would be a chance to jump back in. Jim Mathias, you've got your hand up. Good morning.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. I do appreciate the acknowledgement, and I want to address this to yourself and the whole delegation and the Delegate Grice, who's been excellent to work with on the capital budget. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that in our legislative priorities in January, we brought forward that critical $5 million need for that Ag Rec Center. Respectfully, we went forward. I won't elaborate. We're all familiar. Respectfully, I went forward with President Anderson in the last month and visited all the funding committee chairs and capital budget chairs and the Senate president and speaker to underscore and reiterate that need. I just respectfully ask you, because not only with all due respect do we need those funds, the USDA money will vanquish if we don't have the complete funding in hand by the beginning of FY24. Governor Moore respectfully has done his part by putting in, I think, 12.7, which still leaves us $5 million deficient. So I understand the challenges that you face. We support the shore, and respectfully, we just ask consideration in some form or fashion that we can locate that money. And with all due respect, I bring this from President Anderson and the students. As the only 2 ag schools in Maryland, we're fortunate to have one with us on the Eastern Shore. Thank you so much.
Okay, Jim, thank you very much. And we'll make sure we include that in our discussions 100% and have done.
And Jim, you guys have a big ribbon cutting coming up right after session too, right?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Delegate. And I appreciate you talking with Madam President after the hearing the other day. We do, April 28th, and it's a 2-parter. It's for the new pharmacy building. Our students have moved in. It's online, and the speaker will be there, and hopefully all of you. She'll be the keynote in the morning, and then we have a gala in the evening, a gala dinner. So I personally, on behalf, I see my colleague, Chief of Staff on the call, Dr. Mock, but on behalf of President Anderson, Dr. Mock, all of us, we invite you personally. You are critical in procuring those monies. And we are going forward to provide, where we live, the healthcare needs where we live, the shortages. And I thank you, Delegate Grice, and all of you. And I'm proud of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Delegate Grice, since I don't see any other questions, why don't we either set the stage for what you'd like to do and make a proposal, or we can talk about it and then take it over the next few days.
Yeah, as far as the details and how much we're going to ask for each of these 3 projects, if we can just get an agreement from our delegation that these are our top 3 priorities. As far as a supplemental budget request, one of the Benedictine School, Shore Regional Health with the Easton Hospital, and then down in Salisbury Peninsula Hospital, I think they're asking for about $17 million in the operating budget for was it the
Trauma Center?
Trauma Center, yes, correct.
Yes.
And if we could just get a motion to draft that letter from our folks, and we can certainly send a draft out to everyone before we send it off to the governor, if everyone would like.
Okay. Before we make a motion, can we have some discussion on that? Is there consensus to call a vote on that now? Because what Jeff has done is he's identified a few of these priorities that we've been discussing, and my inclination would be to Jeff, let me ask you this before we do this. How quickly do we need to get this sort of letter to the chairs of the appropriations and budget tax and government office?
The urgency is with the governor. It might even be too late. He may have already made decisions when it comes to the supplementals. And if he has already, we're hoping that there may be another 2 or 1 or 2 more supplementals after that. So we're going to need this letter pretty quickly, actually. And we'll CC the budget committees as well.
Okay. All right. Is there any discussion on Jeff's request before we make a motion? All right, Jeff, can I get a motion? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make that motion for the support letter if I could.
Okay. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, Jeff, we'll work on that immediately. As soon as I get off the phone here, office, we'll get the letter to you so you can see the rough draft, and we'll get this sent through. Senator Mounts?
Yeah, this is a new process for talking about funding and the governor's budget. Senator Matthias brought up University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And I know there are a number of other projects that are important. And I'd hate for us to just say, we're going to say these are the 3 projects for the Eastern Shore, and then kind of walk away from the other projects. And Delegate Grace, what is our time frame in communicating priorities and things? I tend to be a fiscal conservative, but I know the money's going to be spent, and I want to make sure that if the money's going to be spent, that we as a delegation are trying to get as much as we can for our constituents. And
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think part of this letter should be that this isn't our only priorities. But at some point, though, in this whole process, and when I'm trying in the capital budget subcommittee to get as much funding as I can, for the Eastern Shore, I'm constantly being asked, well, what are the priorities? What are the priorities? Because we can't fund everything. And in regards to the supplemental budget, I think that less is even more. Honestly, I will if I would go the other way, actually, I would identify one top priority, and I would say that would be, the hospital in Easton. But then we're not ignoring the other priorities whatsoever. I'm very much aware of the Ag Center at UMES, and so in committee, I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that it's in the budget. And we'll do the same thing on your side as well, on the Senate side, to make sure that funding is in there. So we're not ignoring any of the other projects. But we have to identify, I think it's a good strategy to identify our top priorities in regards to the supplemental budgets, because a lot of folks aren't even asking for anything in the supplemental. And I think we should absolutely do that, because you're not going to get anything unless you ask for it.
So Jeff, can I add just something, because I think Senator Mounts is bringing up something that's important, because I mentioned this when you first introduced, normally what happens is we have each district has their priorities, whether it be for bond bills and then other support that comes through the capital budget. And I don't think we are substituting or replacing those efforts, nor do I think those efforts would be rendered invalid based on the action that we're doing here. I think what you brought to me, and I think with at least some discussions with leadership, was the idea that there is an overriding concern about a supplemental budget for which the inaction could render some substantial and detrimental decisions to be made. And the reason behind bringing Ken Kozel on, because we could not have brought on everybody from every priority on shore to discuss these things, but in the case of Ken Kozel, I get the sense that if there's no action, or if the governor doesn't understand the regional component to this, and that gets missed, that could trigger an event where that hospital actually would not get built in the near future, where we're right on the cusp. And you're choosing 3 priorities. I would assume then, or because of your conversations in your committee and subcommittee, that you feel would be effective to make sure if we're going to choose these things, it's not at the expense of other ones, but rather the delegations speak regionally as to the nature of these, these type of requests. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that was one of the reasons why we brought this to a vote, because we can certainly revisit it. But if you think I'm wrong, but that's sort of the rationale that put us where we are right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, we're gonna get our projects funded to us to an extent. We're not making it public now. Leadership in the House is deciding, which projects will get funded and which won't. And I will say that Chairman Barnes is really he's doing a great job, to be quite honest, making an effort to ensure that we're getting money in every community across the state. It's not as much as we want, but we're getting something. So my suggestion would be for some of these other projects, certainly over the next week, because we're going to move the cap. Actually, I would say really within the next couple of days, reach out to me and just let me know what some of these smaller projects are. When I say smaller, usually less than $100,000. Those are the projects that we can fund. I mean, what we're talking about now, we're talking about, you know, in the tens of millions of dollars that are priorities. So these are much larger projects that, especially the hospital, because right now the governor's office hasn't funded a dollar yet for this. So it hasn't shown that it's a priority for him. And so the message that I want to send from our delegation's perspective is that this is one of our, if not our top priority for our delegation. All these other smaller projects, I'm confident that we'll be able to get many of these projects funded, but unfortunately we won't be able to get as many as I wanted. And I am confident too about the Ag Center down at UMES.
Jeff, I think Senator Hershey's got his hand up. Good morning, Steve.
Morning, Chris, and thank you very much. I think Jeff just reiterated a little bit more of exactly what I was going to say. Just because we make the hospital the highest priority of the Eastern Shore is not a reflection on the other projects because of the different processes that the funding would come from. We're specifically asking the governor to include this in a supplemental budget that comes out. We still are very much working with our budget committees to fund projects in the capital budget and through legislative bond requests as well too. So, you know, there are different series of the ways funding can occur. Honestly, I've already written the governor twice with regards to the hospital. Once immediately when the budget was introduced and the funding was not there, and then earlier this week supporting the funding for the hospital in the supplemental budget. You know, keep in mind, this hospital has been a project that we've been working towards for the last 10 years or so, when we first came to this hub and spoke approach to delivering healthcare services on the Eastern Shore. And we've seen the spoke approaches already be implemented. Obviously, the hospital in Dorchester County in Cambridge, that's closed down. The brand new freestanding medical facility was built. We've made substantial changes up to the Chestertown Hospital, where we're now creating the Aging and Wellness Center of Excellence, which is exactly what the community wanted. So this is an integral part of this 5-county approach to delivering healthcare. And I just want to make sure that when we talk about it, you know, there shouldn't be a whole lot of doubt that this isn't the highest priority for the Eastern Shore to make sure that this hospital comes to fruition. And hopefully we get Governor Moore on board with that request.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. And before I go to Delegate Hartman, and you may, Wayne, bring up Title Health, but you know, they've presented us on 3 occasions now the nature of the trauma center, and you know there is a consequence for inaction in that regard, and you know that was made aware to us even as recent as last week. You know, so that these healthcare priorities for which inaction could yield a result that I think citizens would not view as being constructive. I think that's where, you know, the delegation weighs in, and Senator Hershey, I thank you for reiterating and restating sort of what Jeff was saying, that you know, this job we have in Annapolis, especially with a new administration, becomes doubly important because we do have the experience and you do have the leadership to carry these conversations on behalf of the region. And these things matter. Letter writing campaigns aren't just letter writing. It speaks to these offices that we hold that are a promise to the voters and the citizens that we're going to act. And I think this is sending a strong message if we do so as a delegation of the Eastern Shore.
Agreed.
Delegate Hartman. No question, Delegate. I can't hear you, Wayne.
That's a good idea to unmute. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking at this as the team approach. And when we say something's a priority, it doesn't mean that we're ignoring projects in our backyard. I mean, it's, times Ocean City is asking for big money for the convention center. I see the importance of the hospital there, the jobs it's going to create for the Eastern Shore and better the shore as a whole. We travel through those areas, and God forbid something happen. I think everybody agrees that we need, facilities to take care of that, especially the tourism that the Eastern Shore, such as Ocean City, drives. We need to have, these facilities available. So, there are, as the chair mentioned, total health is, in a crisis situation right now for $17 million of funding for at least the next 2 years to be able to remain as a trauma center. So, when we talk about the importance of things, we need this here, but there are also other needs. In my backyard, Diakonia homeless shelter, looking at 3 counties that it serves, they have needs. So maybe we need to sit down and have a short meeting on budget priorities in each of our districts, and that way Jeff can have all those and know what our individual priorities are. But looking at the big picture down, I think it's an important thing that we need to do sooner than later.
Thank you, Delegate Hartman. So Delegate Grice, again, we'll work on drafting this letter and with the aim of getting this in the hands of those that need it today, because I believe what I'm hearing you say is that time is of the essence, and that we want to speak to that. Is there any other anything for the good of the order before we adjourn? Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.